Who do you think Arnold is?
Well, I've got a theory. Could be Bernard, a robot Bernard. No, something isn't right there. I've got a theory. Could be Dolores. He hid himself inside a massive robot mind. Yes, I've got a theory. We should podcast fast. Every week, a new hot take. We cannot take them back.
Asterisk. Maybe not every week, but pretty much every week. I apologize to the listeners out there. I was in Tokyo, so we missed a week. Jacob picked up the slack one of the weeks, but we are back for Westworld Theories. I am Jim Scampoli.
I'm Jacob Burrows, and I can only assume you were so overwhelmed by the promos to Westworld for episode 5 that you just fucked off to your own private Shogun world. And I do appreciate that we will be getting a lot of Japanese insight from Jim-san. About all the Japanese content in these episodes. We are discussing episodes 5 and 6 of season 2, and there will be spoilers for those episodes. We're also kind of discussing episode 4 because we haven't had a chance to talk about it. So lots to get to. What's your first thought, Jim-san?
Now, I mean, I guess this is anecdotal, but are people getting a little fed up with Westworld? At least the people in my bubble seem to be falling in and out of love with Westworld.
Yeah.
What say you?
I get this. I get that feeling. I get the feeling that everyone else is getting the feeling that I got in season 1 a bit. And I'm kind of, I mean, I don't want to say that I was ahead of the curve or anything. I don't want to say that I saw this coming, but the frustration people are feeling when they can't keep track of anything, that's what I remember from season 1. And then at the end, it was just sort of, you need to embrace that you don't know what's going to happen. And if you want to play around with theories, that's fine. But basically, the reason no reveals or anything really were that massive to me was that I had no idea what the fuck was going on at any time. And then at the end, it's like, this is what's going on. It's not really a reveal then. It's more of a, whoa, that's what was happening? And I think that might be annoying to people.
Well, I would argue and maybe try to force you to admit this, but even if you felt that way, wouldn't you say that season 1 felt like it had more of a direction towards something than season 2?
I mean, I see where you're coming from, but this stuff with immortal hosts and stuff like that is enough of a direction for me. I think that's where it's going. I think we're gonna find.
Well, maybe I'm sorry to cut you off.
No,
I know
it's okay.
I guess maybe it was not so much that it had a direction, but since there was this discovery of the park and what, like, not necessarily the rules because they broke their own rules, but I guess this discovery of the park and kind of the rules of it, being that it was season 1, played a better hook to go along with the story. Whereas I feel season 2, and I'm not even as down on it as most people. I'm sorry if you're taking this as me being negative. I'm really not. I'm in on the show. But I feel like they're doing the discovery of the park again in season 2. And it's like, so that part feels like it's holding things back because I'm like, all right, I already know this. I already know about this. But they're trying to reframe it as well. So that's why they're doing that. But I don't know. I guess I just feel like there's more of a hook to keep people fully involved that is lost a little bit here in season 2 because we are jumping around a bit and I'm still waiting for things to start to come together because every new scene it's like, okay, when is this taking place? Okay, who's involved? Oh, this is this version of that person. All right, I'm on board. But meanwhile, like 4 lines of dialogue have happened and I've missed them because I'm trying to place everything as the scene starts.
Yeah, that can get a bit exhausting. It's just, I mean, the show is such an unreliable narrator that we don't take anything at face value, and it's confusing even if you just take it at face value. So I can definitely see where people are coming from. I just recall that I had that type of frustration in the middle episodes of West. Like, tell me what happened in episode 5 of season 1, Jim. Tell me what happened in 6, 7. I think 8 maybe is where we were getting into Bernard being Arnold and things like that. But generally,
Well, I
like,
would tell you that Ford's story of the old Greyhound happened in episode 5,
okay.
and the Man in Black stumbles upon Ford's boy, whatever those notes mean that I have from episode 5. So yeah, I don't know what that is.
Well, no, the Greyhound does show up at the end of episode 6, Jim, so it actually ties in.
Oh, holy shit!
Yeah.
Wow, that's right. I didn't make that as I was goofing on my notes. I didn't make the connection, but you're right.
Yeah, so shows what I know, you know. But yes, so there's a few episodes here for us to plow through. I mean, do you want to have a quick talk on episode 4 first, or what do you think? I mean, did
Um,
you? Yeah,
I didn't make a lot of notes on it, but just because I wasn't sure what we'd be talking about.
sure.
But I guess the main thing I came away with, of course, we learned that woman from the Raj was the Man in Black's daughter. Um, and did we get another bombshell?
Well, I
What?
mean, Delos, the big thing about
Oh,
immortality in
yes,
Delos.
of course. I did like that. I mean, it was kind of clear to me what was happening. Like I was just waiting for that moment when Man in Black was going to walk into that room.
Yeah.
Delos was doing the same thing. It was very Lost to me. The show Lost I'm talking about. And I know that's usually used as a burn, but I'm not using it as a burn because I feel like, love it or hate it, the journey and some of the stuff they did with character moments was still really good. And that, I mean, obviously had that kind of feel. The horror moment, the horror version when they stumble upon the door and then he's all cut up like Event Horizon, I thought was a bit over the top.
Yep.
Like he's on the exercise bike still, but he's like a zombie man and he's killed the handler that was outside. So I was trying to, again, I'm stuck in thinking like, okay, so how much longer after the last time the Man in Black walks out of there are
Yeah.
we?
Yeah.
Like trying to place things in a time frame. And I know I probably shouldn't be doing that. Maybe that's my own fault, but the show kind of begs it because the way it jumps around so much.
Yeah, I mean, I like the zombie weird stuff at the end. It's supposedly it's 2 weeks. Like there was some panel showing that 2 weeks of degradation to his brain or whatever, but who knows? And I babbled enough about that episode in my solo thing for literally 23 minutes straight. So let's just get into episode 5. And obviously, the big thing in episode 5 is it's the Shogun World episode, right?
Yes. And also Bernard does say, is this now?
Yes.
Which got me very excited. Uh,
Yes.
and we learn about, I mean, yeah, there's the Shogun World stuff. And kind of at the beginning, they do mention that a lot of the chips they're pulling are completely blank, or they
Yes.
call them virgin memory chips.
Yeah,
So,
we're starting in what is supposedly the furthest point in the future where they're in the base with a lot of dead bodies that they've drained out of the water that we saw at the end of episode 1, and they're finding that they got brains in them that are not just wiped, they're totally empty. Do you make anything of that?
well, it's weird because we start getting into stuff in Shogun World with Maeve, where Maeve is Neo from the Matrix,
Yep.
and it makes me not care about anything at all.
Okay.
Because it's like, I mean, on one hand, I've talked about this earlier in previous episode discussions where it does feel like Maeve and Dolores are obviously like different sides of the same coin, and they're kind of coming about things their own way. But what are we going to do now if Maeve is so powerful? If like she doesn't even need to speak anymore, she just looks and thinks at people and makes them do stuff. I know I'm kind of jumping ahead in the episode, but like, so what? Then what? What happens then?
Well, at least it's just hosts, and everyone is a host. So yes, can control people, can control anyone. It's supposedly, I mean, we can assume related to the mesh network that was introduced earlier, where Bernard says, "Oh, you can do a thing by communicating to one, and then that connects to those next to it and those next to it." So
Yep.
yeah, maybe she can release something, some virus or whatever that is going to spread to every host because she apparently just has access to this. Has this? I mean, I know they boosted her stats like a bunch and gave her like access to stuff. Is there any explanation that you've seen or can think of why she is Neo?
That's the only thing I can think of, but I have to assume since Dolores has her like people with her that she's boosted her own stats because I mean they in this episode there are some upgrades or what have you added to Teddy by the end.
Hmm.
Um so I don't know. It's a little strange. Maybe a little bit too much to me because again, it's like I like this idea they do where they run into versions of themselves because they get to play around with the writer being a hack more and how he basically did the same kind of characterizations and storylines in Shogun World, which makes me believe though that these people paying what I assume is top dollar. It's like if they did one storyline in Westworld, I mean, I don't know. Then people could argue like, "Oh, EA does it all the time." Ha ha. It's
Yeah.
like, "Yay, bro."
You ever play a BioWare? You ever romance people in BioWare? You always got the same caricatures, the same people to match.
I
But
just
yeah,
well, I'm sorry, you go ahead.
I was gonna say, you come for the special effects, Jim, and the fucking. So you want different types of fucking and special effects.
I just think the problem we're running in with this season is that at least for me, I'm aware of the park and I want to learn more about I'm not against mysteries. I'm all for the mystery and I'm fine with learning about the park, but much like in an earlier episode where we had to like be a western for a while, we have to sit in the storyline. And that's not interesting to me. I don't want to sit in the storyline of these host characters. I get that they're trying to put across that things are different because the hosts are different, but we have to sit in this story. And then even that doesn't fully make sense because we have this thing that happens where like the Shogun sends his men to take Sakura away from Akane or Kane. And then they're like, we need to get out of here because she does what she's not supposed to do. And the writer is constantly like, this isn't supposed to happen. This isn't supposed to happen. It's like, yeah, no shit. Have you been paying attention? Things are not quite as they're supposed to
Yeah,
be.
no. The writer is in episode 5. He's really just a mouth. I mean, he's not much of a character. He's just like like doing explanations of things.
Yeah.
But then when he says like, "What? How could this happen in the park?" It's like, "What? They're killing humans. That's not supposed to happen either." No, but the Shogun isn't supposed to do this. Yeah, no shit.
Yeah. But the thing is, so like, yeah, she stabs the Shogun's guy, and then they even say they're like, we need to get out of here. But then they don't get out of there, like, because then it's nighttime and the ninjas come and they're like, why did the ninjas come? Didn't you just say the ninjas were coming or whatever? Like, I was just confused at this. It reminded me of how Dolores is like, we need to protect Abernathy. And then she just leaves him in a fucking easy to get spot where he's taken away. So
Yeah.
it's like we have to follow through in this, like as if we're a Westworld player and sit in the storyline. And it doesn't feel like there are any stakes really. I mean, because they're trying to make it like there are, but there really aren't. And then we get even less stakes because Maeve can just control people with their mind and make them attack each other. Which I mean, it's cool, like it's gory and there's a lot of action, and that's interesting. But then for whatever reason, she doesn't help the Ronin when he has his battle, which he wins, which is fine. But again, why is she even wasting her time at this point? There's they give you the hook where she says, yeah, we have to make our own choices. So I understand that. So then why isn't she, instead of making them kill each other, if she's all for like the hosts becoming like self-aware, why isn't she just giving them more knowledge and having them join her ranks? So it's flimsy to me. In one hand, she's like, oh, kill each other, who gives a fuck? And then on the other hand, it's like, we need to follow through on our destiny, and because that's like the path to being self-aware or whatever. It's just a little bit of both and it doesn't work.
I think that's fair, and I mean, her whole motivation is finding her daughter. Which, I mean, I guess we're just gonna be jumping around a lot because we are discussing several episodes. But I
Yeah.
mean, when she finds her daughter, she acts all surprised that there's another mother there, where, like, what did you expect? Like, what did you think was gonna happen? Because that shouldn't be a reveal to you or to us. That's how the park works. Did you think she was living there alone? I'm surprised she was there at all.
Yeah.
We had silly theories that maybe she was a human girl, actually. I guess that's probably not true. But then, yeah, I mean, the Ghost Nation show up, and I guess we still don't know what they're all about, because they're talking to her like, "Oh, come with us. Your destiny is the same as ours." Blah blah blah. So yeah, I mean, her daughter thing never really. I mean, that's the thing when she's in Shogun World. It's like, I have to find my daughter, and do you? Do you? Are you really?
Yeah.
You're hanging out here for a long time, but at the same time, I did enjoy seeing Shogun World. I can't complain too much.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I did enjoy it a bit. Like, it's just, I don't know. I wish we didn't have to just sit through basically a Shogun World storyline. And like, you could still go to Shogun World, but maybe advance things with the hosts. But we keep going like one step forward, two steps back in a lot of cases, which I guess is fine because the hosts, like Dolores has said, some of them are children and they still don't get quite what's happening. And we see that the Shogun is kind of like Bernard. He's got the brain juice coming out of his ears, so he doesn't know what's going on. He's getting all whacked out. Like, I think that's all interesting, and the people are cutting their ears off because they know she's a witch.
Mm-hmm.
But it just brings it to the point where she's Neo, so it doesn't fully, like, all right.
Well, I mean, we think that this is a side storyline, but of course, at the end, it's going to be revealed that the Shogun was Bernard all along. So we've all figured that out. I don't even need to go into the details of this very obvious theory. We also have a lot of new stuff about this cradle, which I did mention in my solo thing, but we haven't really gotten into at all what that's about. I mean, episode 5 does start in the future, the furthest point in the future, with two Swedish actors talking at each other about how the cradles. I mean, they say that, a third of the hosts are virgin hosts, and they've effectively lost. Well, maybe not a third, but they've lost a lot of the host consciousnesses that are backed up in the cradle, supposedly, that has been burned or destroyed. And of course, we get to see a bit more of that in episode 6.
Yes, yeah. Which does like lead me to believe that those, like, the third that are the wiped ones are actually like the saved ones somehow, because either their consciousness is like in the cloud or it's basically in the people that they don't understand that they're hosts or something like that. Obviously, there's something important there. And yeah, and we see with Bernard's flashbacks of how he's killing people and taking one of the little brain chips, which I assume is maybe Ford. I mean, I don't know.
Well, at
Like,
this point, I feel pretty sure that was Ford, and he went and put him into the cradle.
yes, and that's what kind of has him as being the ghost in the machine
Yeah.
for the most part. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, but it also leads us to another, like, because then Bernard specifically gets his little brain marble taken out in a painful thing. Like, he doesn't pain's just a programming, it doesn't matter, I can suffer through it. But now he's in like basically a dream world in a way, where he's back in another version of Westworld.
Well,
Which,
you realize that this adds a whole nother level to what is in which time, what is real, because when we head into this dream world, let's just call it the Matrix. When we head into the Matrix, we get extra letterboxing. And where have we seen that before? Well, it's at the start of the very first scene of the season when Bernard is talking to Dolores. And that is the scene that is continued at the start of episode 6, where it ends with Dolores actually taking charge and saying, no, that's not what he said. And she's checking for fidelity, which is the same thing going on with Delos, which seems to be the show saying outright that, yes, this is not quite Bernard anymore. This is them trying to create an immortal Arnold and checking for fidelity, maybe inside the cradle. What do you think?
yes, I mean, it's very, I mean, it's right on the nose for what the theory has been, is that Bernard in the present, like, or most future point that we've been seeing, has been this simulation or what have you to like kickstart something in Bernard/Arnold's head, like whether it be a memory or some sort of programming or the encrypted data, because it is specifically called out that like they've had this conversation a few times. And of course, it also harkens back to what we saw with Delos and William and how he comes and they have the same conversation to check for, I guess, ticks or issues. So again, this is something that feels very reminiscent of Lost to me.
Yeah.
Like the idea of repetition and testing and seeing echoes of the same test or whatever happening in different storylines. I do think it's interesting, though. I am kind of on board, but again, it is tough to now, like you said, this is another point of reference in time to keep track of and figure out where we are. Where, because usually it's like, okay, there's Teddy, so now I know it's this spot. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
there's the other. There's what was the bald guy? A
He's a
Hemsworth or
Skarsgård.
whatever.
A
Skarsgård.
Skarsgård. Yeah.
Yeah, Skarsgård. All right, there's the Skarsgård. I know where we're at. So it is like, I mean, I on one hand I like that. I like the little visual cues to know where you're at, but it's just there's so much in Westworld to keep track of. And then there's always then you're wondering like, okay, so where is Maeve in this situation? And have they been tricking me and maybe this part is actually here? But then again, I shouldn't be doing that. Just kind of let the show speak for itself.
Well, I mean, it's inevitable. We got a whole wall about it. Like, we can't stop doing that. I think the show invites it. Like, the show does not go like, hey, don't worry about it. Just chill out and it'll all work out. The show goes, what do you think this means? But wait, what do you think this means? So, of course, we're going to do that. So what I just wanted to point or find what Skarsgård said. Skarsgård, in the future point in episode 5, he says, "Well, that's quite a story you gave them," talking about like I don't know what's been happening, and I don't know who he's referring to. And what is I got it here, and one hell of an ending, and then we see all the corpses, and then we sort of pan over to Bernard or Arnold, and he talks about how did all these disparate threads come together to create this nightmare. And he says, if we figure that out, we'll know how the story turns. It's like we're in the fucking writer's room. Because that is like exactly, he's just saying, this is so confusing, man. Like, where is this even going? But that's all showing us that it's all part of it, and that's part of the point.
Well, and that's the other thing, because it's like we jump around in these different time frames, like, you know, when the uprising is just happening to maybe a few days into it to, you know, it's been what 15 days later or whatever. But it's consistently we go into a room and there are a bunch of dead bodies and like pieces of people everywhere. So it's like I never know if I'm supposed to be caring, like, oh no, like those people were killed, because then other times they'll go in and it's like business as usual. They're like working on hosts and shit. I mean, I guess I understand that some pieces of the park haven't been touched depending on when it is, but it makes it a bit more confusing to me when like they walk through one place that's been massacred and they go into another room and they're just kind of like rebooting hosts and putting them back together and stuff like that.
Well, I'll say I think that's going to be cleared up real quick, because yes, there's been violence at the base of operations, but they still got okay. Charlotte Hale's there. She's nailing Peter Abernathy to a chair and all that. And the thing that's gonna fuck everything up is when the train gets there, as we were shown, because Dolores has been going on about this train for 3 fucking episodes. They're finally on the train. They're going to the base, and now everyone is gonna die, I assume, and the cradle's gonna get burned, and all shit's gonna go to hell. It is sort of, yeah, they've sort of halfway done it, and in Shogun World, they even show like, oh, there's Delos security all strung up and almost dead, and we're like, oh, okay, so they're already trying to sort things out, and they totally failed. Were those the original park security? I'm not 100%. You're right. It is kind of like, oh, more corpses. We haven't even seen that many corpses get made, as it were. We've just sort of seen, it's just standard that there are corpses everywhere and no one really cares.
Yeah. And then it's like, sometimes they will call out that, okay, these were security and they've been, you know, destroyed, or other times it's just pieces of hosts. So I don't know. Either way. Um, but yes, I mean, the quick backtrack to what Dolores says. She does say, yeah, this is a test, one we've done countless times for fidelity, like you had said. So that's kind of cluing in on and maybe basically confirming everyone's theory about Bernard and where he's at. Um, I do like that we like the way this show is like aware of how we're they want us
Uh,
to watch it, and like what we
yeah.
just talked about as far as like questioning what's this and what's that, where we even get a point where the man in black has to be like,
Yeah.
oh, you're a host, I can't believe they made my daughter a host, I can't believe
Yes. And we are still not convinced he's wrong, but yes, of course, he's one of us. He knows Westworld better than anyone. He's been part of it from the start. So yeah, he's like, stupid, fuck you, Ford. She's like, what are you talking about? And I still haven't ruled it out because I've seen like countless threads like, oh, but she didn't actually get shot in the thing. She shot the other guy, so she could be a host. And I'm like, yeah, I know, anyone could be a host, but that takes even more of the air out of the stakes.
Yeah, but it's just so funny that they have to have this back and forth.
Yeah.
And it does make complete sense. That's, like you said, yeah, the man in black is us. He knows some of the, underhanded things they'll try. But again, it's still like I do like that conversation as well, just because we do get a little bit more. But we find out that I mean, the man in black can't just call it in and go back home. Even though it's very convincing, I did almost think he would, but I was like, no, for the show, he can't do that. But I still don't really get what the hell he needs to do, so I don't know what I'm supposed to root for here because I don't know what he's doing.
Yeah, no, it's like it's even like there was just this kid who said, "Oh yeah, you get one final game." And he was like, "Okay, then I need to do this." But he has said that he's going to rectify his biggest mistake. So it's got to be connected to all of this Peter Abernathy stuff. But on the other hand, then he wouldn't be going around like, "Where's Glory? Where's the thing?" He'd be like, "Where's fucking Peter Abernathy?" Like everyone else in this show. So yeah.
Um, yeah. So then, and I mean, of course, like we mentioned it a little bit, Dolores makes some changes to Teddy because it's very similar to. I mean, the one thing I like about Dolores, at least over Maeve, even Maeve does specifically talk about how like her love for her child is real, but I still don't fully buy it.
Yeah.
I know the show's saying that no, or at least the creators have said that is her own choice. Like she is following through on her own choice, not programming. But at least Dolores kind of questions it and talks about like, do I love Teddy or is it just more part of how I'm written and what my programming is?
Yeah.
They have, of course, a sensual love scene, and she comes out the other end thinking that it is true love, but oh, Teddy, you're just too pure for this world. So we need to go ahead and make some changes, much like the cows that I do like the story she had about the sick cows and you had to burn them up and then the smoke makes the flies go away and you got to get rid of the weak. So Teddy gets changed. But although it's just, he's kind of just acting like all that means is he acts like everyone else now. He just shoots people and stuff. Like we haven't seen too much from it. He's just hardcore now, I guess.
Yeah, no, yeah, like removed his empathy and made him a real hard ass. But I can only assume she keeps their loyalty meters up, or she should anyway, because they're all like following her, and he does act like Dolores is being too soft, making it seem like he's gonna, I don't know, make a move, try to take over or something, which would be, ironic in its own way, but also like kind of boring. Because and also, I mean, her reaction when he comes and like is acting the way she programmed him is like, oh my god, what have I done? And it's
Yeah.
like, you knew what you were doing. Like he doesn't act super crazy. He hasn't gone and like done anything more awful than all the rest of the people following you.
I do get it though, and it's like a small point that they don't need to really kind of flesh out on the show, but since the show is a lot about like what makes us us, like what is it that makes like whether you or you a live person or self-aware, you know, now that she messes with him is it the same Teddy that she loves? Does she love him anymore? Because now he's not Teddy technically.
Yeah.
So I guess I get that, but also, yeah, it's not really something that I care for them to explore too much. But here we are.
Well, and she also talks so much about freedom for the droids, but she has like I'm not convinced that she's free because it feels like she's acting according to Ford's instructions of shooting him and everything. We did get, I mean, the whole of last season was her suffering so much that she became self-aware or whatever and started hearing her own voice instead of Arnold. But still, in this season, I'm not that convinced because it feels like she's all part of someone else's game. I realize that yeah, we need to get here. We need to get my father, and I don't even know if that's to get the data out of him or because she actually cares about him. But she doesn't give anyone freedom. And I mean, this gives us a contrast to Maeve. Even though she makes people murder each other, she generally gives a choice, usually. So there's a bit of a contrast there, I guess. But I mean, I have really low involvement in Dolores, honestly, at this point, way less than last season. Even though she is in a consistent storyline now, which was sort of making it hard to empathize with her in season one. Now she's in one storyline, she's got one memory, she's got the possibility of development. I still feel further removed from her, and not just because she's going around and killing people, kind of because it feels like I don't know I don't know what she's doing really.
Yeah, no, I get that. Well, because it feels very drawn out with what's happening because I mean, I guess it's kind of the nature of TV because she's brought to this big climax at the end of the season, but then by design, now things have to be reeled in a bit to kind of be explored throughout this second season. And I don't feel like they've done a great job of keeping that interesting because it does feel rather one note. Like she makes these speeches and does tough things, but again, we still don't know the end game. So it's I don't think it's as I don't think the Man in Black is as bad, but it's like a very similar situation where it's like, yeah, we see the Man in Black, he has to talk in riddles and then go on this quest. We just don't know what the quest is for. So
Yes, speaking of the Man in Black, I just wanted to mention that when he is talking to his daughter, we also get to see, like, acting wise, something very different from him. I really like as you said, you were almost convinced by his speech, his watery eyes, and that whole thing, and it was just a refreshing look at the character. So whether she's a host or not, a good introduction to get her back in the game. And yeah, I also kind of thought like, oh, maybe he's gonna do it, and then when he just doesn't, it's almost like, whoa, what else? What do you do? Where are you going then? What's so important? And I guess he wants to blow up what he did. He says he's gonna rectify his mistakes and everything, but I don't know what that means, and I don't think anyone does.
yes, yeah, I agree. But yeah, no, Ed Harris is really great, and it is nice to see him have a chance to show a little bit more to the character. And it's not even so much I think he's putting on an act for his daughter. I think he does want to make things right there. But yes, there's this more important thing here in Westworld that he has to take care of. Um, yeah, we kind of talked about Maeve a bit. I mean, the other thing with Shogun World is like we get these characters, but then it gets to this point where they have to stay behind and not go on the journey,
Yeah.
which I guess makes sense for what the characters they're supposed to be. Like they are supposed to be this like like their argument makes sense because they're Japanese and they're about the respect and they're
As
gonna
you've learned.
they're gonna stay and fight for their home. But then it just does come off as they were this pit stop for a little while because we showed some samurai last season. So we got to play around with samurai, but now here we go back off to the races.
Yeah, it gives the feeling of like a very different TV show where one episode you go and do a thing. It felt like that. Like we went and did a thing, and now that's done. Like we brought the Snake Lady with us, but we got to leave the interesting characters behind. And I mean, probably to be fair, they're probably going to show up towards the season finale, I would assume.
Yeah.
But it's obviously makes sense because now we get to spend more time with these two great technicians and their wonderful comic relief.
Yes, yeah. And it's fun to see them kind of in the same garb as well and having to basically play the game
Yeah.
and go along for the storyline. But yes, I'm so sick of Felix and his annoying friend,
Yeah.
and of course the writer. Like,
Yes.
and it's constantly like Maeve has to be like, uh all right, well, get out of here, or we'll kill you too, or stand in line, and then he has to stand in line, and then I'll always come up with some sort of angle that's going to be sneaky. And as we see in this, he gets like a cell phone or whatever from one of the dead guards and makes a call
Yeah.
because we don't want arrows shot at your head anymore. We're finally putting an end to this.
Well, and like these two technicians, I most of the time they're silent, so they're okay, I guess. But when he makes the call, when he grabs a cell phone and he like tries to save their lives, and the technician guy, Felix, I guess, he's like, "Oh man, that sucks. You're so shitty. Fuck you." And like at that point, I'm like, "Well, this writer guy is pretty all right after all," because it makes no sense that you would like. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense, Jim. You've been it's been violence, right? You've been threatened, and you're gonna get killed. That's been the thing. And yeah, I get that Lee, the writer, and Maeve have this sort of burgeoning, growing, some sort of connection of him trying to understand that the people he created are becoming real people and maybe growing a bit as a person himself. But it's still like, Uncle gets killed any fucking second. Why are you upset that I'm calling for help?
Yeah, because Felix has the line where he says, "We have to help them," and yeah, I'm with you. I'm like, why? Well, why do you have to help them? What are you talking about? Because number one, Maeve fucking controls things with her mind. You've seen this. Maeve made a bunch of samurai chop their own heads off and slice their own throats. So I wouldn't be too concerned.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess does she not have the same power when it comes to the first peoples, or what do they call them again?
Well, but I would assume that's just because she didn't speak their language when she first tried to influence them. And the writer hammers home, you got to speak the right language. And she does speak that language because every host speaks every language deep down.
Yes, yeah. Uh,
So,
well,
I
and
mean,
then
but I
oh,
was
go.
just gonna say Felix is the dummy who like just gave Maeve all this power for no particular reason. Like, did fuck up all her stats and make her immortal and everything, and then what? Oh, we gotta kill people now. Like, I mean, I'll say this: he's a traitor to the human race. So, no surprise from him that he's down with this. The other technician is the one who's just annoying, as you said, but at least he should want to get out of there, but he doesn't kind of say anything. We just got Lee making reasonable calls for once.
And yeah, so Maeve arrives home, and the first people show up. But I mean, when we saw the flashbacks before, it kept going to the Man in Black. I didn't it when she would see like one of the first peoples come up to what are they called again? I can't remember what.
The
So,
Ghost Nation.
the Ghost Nation, yes. She would see like the Ghost Nation come in the house in her memories, but then it would be the Man in Black sometimes, right? Or am
Yeah.
I remembering that wrong?
No, that's true.
Okay.
Uh,
Because now because they're playing around with the Ghost Nation. They do even specifically say at one point that they're only killing hosts.
yeah.
And I know we've talked a little bit about that maybe they're more of a security protocol or something for the park. And I don't know. It seem like they are there to slaughter them, or they do say something else, right? Like come with us or something.
Yeah. I definitely. They are showing up, and Maeve is having these flashbacks. Like, oh no. But yeah, they're not there to slaughter them because they say I can try to find the exact quote, but basically like, come with me. Your path is the same as my path.
Yes, yeah, it's something along those lines. Okay. And then yeah, we see the train go into the tunnel and it explodes, and then there's kind of a feeling of an explosion at the cradle. But good old Bernard is jacked in. He's
Yeah.
in the Matrix right now, and we get to see. We get the big reveal. Ford, of course, is in the Matrix
Yeah.
now. This wasn't a weird like CGI Ford, right? It was just because it was a reflection. Like there is Anthony Hopkins is back for the show or what?
I mean, he's gonna be at least in the next episode, right? He's gotta. I would assume it's like a cameo thing where he's gonna be like the architect at the end of the Matrix 2, Matrix Reloaded, where he's gonna say some dope shit to Bernard about, or by dope I mean cryptic as fuck, of course,
Yeah.
stuff about what he has to do next and stuff like that. Now, I do want to talk about this for a bit because the brain ball, we can assume, well, maybe we can't, but maybe what we thought was the brain ball was Ford, and Bernard brought him to the cradle and inserted Ford in there to let Ford become this ghost in the machine and do all this shit. But if in the future we have Arnold, where did that brain ball come from? Was Ford already in the machine? And Bernard went and made himself. And when is this transition going to happen? Is it going to happen maybe inside the cradle, since we see Dolores talking to him with the extra letterboxing, which makes us think that this transformation might be something that is happening in the code of the cradle? Then he already has the body, he could get put back in it, but then there's this stuff about how one version of him has a scar and the other one doesn't have a scar. So I don't know. What do you think?
I don't. What was the thing with the scar? I don't quite remember that.
I've just seen pictures and screen grabs saying that in the future timeline, he does not have this scar that he got at the end of season 1 that is in the rest of the timelines. But it's like I opened these posts and there's like 48 screen grabs, and I was scrolling through like, okay, I guess there's a scar because it's not super noticeable, but it feels like exactly the type of thing that they would do in Westworld.
Yeah, you're right. That it does make complete sense. Well, I mean, it definitely things are opened up now because I mean, literally, if his head is opened up,
Yeah.
very easily, where they could just drop another little memory ball in there, and it's Bernard, but more Arnold or Bernarnold now. So yeah, if anything's gonna happen, this is the point, or at the very least, his memory chip or whatever it is gets infected somehow with what they want. But then again, this version of Bernard has memories of being like destructive Bernard. So I don't know what
Yeah.
comes out on the other end. And I guess did he get his situation fixed when he was leaking like brain juice?
No, I think that's also part of it.
No part
That
of it.
I mean that's part of the theory that he's gonna start malfunctioning, so he needs a new Bernard body. That's actually more of an Arnold body.
Oh, I will say, and I mean, if you care about, I guess, quote spoilers as far as something in the like next time on Westworld, if you
Okay, I'll
even
take my headphones off.
yeah,
No, it's
there,
okay.
it did look like there was a shot of Charlotte in a room with a bunch of Bernard bodies that were all beaten to different versions of, you know, violence, or like some had his head ripped open, some had this, some had that. So
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
hard to say if that is like you never know with Westworld though, if that's something he's going to see in the Matrix here and it's not a real thing, or if it is something that's happening in the world.
No, I think that's going to be absolutely a real thing, and I think that's going to be part of the explanation that he gets his own Arnold body, his new bod,
His new
and
star
that's
pod.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And there was something else I was thinking of, but I lost my train of thought, so I'll ask a different question. Ford in the cradle. This stuff with hosts talking to the man in black and saying like, oh, blah 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 blah. Is that Ford operating from the cradle, or is that just something that was pre-programmed by him?
I have to lean towards that's him in the cradle, and that through whatever this same type of network that Maeve can tap into, even though I guess it's more shortwave, but like if he's in the cradle, I would build some pseudoscience of how he can jump from host to host to host to host
Yeah.
to have as far as reach as he needs, like through like nearby hosts, and it's all coming from the cradle. I would imagine.
Okay. Well, if that's the case, I do want to present you with a theory, since we often do that, and I don't think it's necessarily correct. It's one I found on the Reddit, as we often do, but a theory that basically states that hosts in general are not run locally. That hosts are basically like web browsers that ping to the server, and the server is the cradle, and that is where all the logic that is a host actually happens. And I mean, we have fucking streaming gaming already too. You can stream from a computer somewhere else and get high def games on your screen. So maybe if that's what's happening, there could be a connection to a bunch of dead hosts in the water, because Bernard is there in the cradle, and we do know that the cradle is going to get really fucked up really soon.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of works because it also ties into we're waiting on the promise of Bernard in the first episode where he says, I killed them all, or whatever his line was.
Yes.
So that would be, yeah, the easiest way, because clearly it wasn't going to be a scene of him pushing them off the cliff into water, like just going, get out of here. There's going to be some sort of networked or some sort of thing he's going to tap into that's going to affect all these hosts. So yeah, I think that's a kind of a logical step, especially now that he's at this point. Because I mean, the cradle, it's relatively a new thing they've introduced, right? Or is this something they've talked about in the past?
It's been mentioned, but this is the first time we've seen it.
Yeah, and I guess it kind of plays into, that was the question I had earlier in the season when they introduced this whole like memory chip, brain chip they could pull, where I was like, well, what if it gets damaged? People get shot in the head all the time. But they do like explicitly say in this episode that everyone's consciousness is like stored here in the cradle. Like, so if they die, they basically make a copy or get uploaded or downloaded from this area here, which
Yeah.
it is. I mean, that's the whole other thing that makes Westworld a bit more, I mean, not that Westworld's the most realistic thing, but you know, obviously it's playing off of real world headlines with some of the data mining stuff they're touching on. But when you look at it now, it is like, why wouldn't it just be virtual reality? Like, no one, if like something like Westworld could happen in our life, or at least X amount of years from now, but it would be a VR thing clearly, because who wants to spend all this money on overhead?
Yeah.
And I'm still wondering how they have these sweeping mountains and lakesides in fucking Shogun World, and then they have it as well in Westworld, and now I'm like, oh, clearly they're on the moon or they're underwater somewhere. Where are they getting all this land from?
Well, the Chinese, I guess, but the Chinese are everywhere in the future, so who knows? Because we
But
did see those officials like, oh, they're from the government, and they're and Mr. Strand, the Delos guy, shows a paper like, your government has given us this, blah blah blah.
but yeah, because it's just all this upkeep to spend on this land and Sweetwater and these host robots when they have basically one that's in the cloud. But I guess maybe people can't jack into that like quite like a host can.
Well, to be fair, they made it pretty plain in season 1 that Westworld was a terrible business idea and they were losing all kinds of money. And it was only because Delos wanted to keep it running for their own weird private reasons that it even worked out at all. And they were pressuring Ford to make different narratives. We got to sell this shit. But at the same time, it wasn't about that. It was about this secret stuff going on anyway, which maybe wouldn't have worked in VR. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, there's still plenty of room for it to be that they are just jacked into a Matrix type system.
No, yeah, exactly.
And
I mean, we have so many things now that we don't know, because the first season was like, okay, we don't know what we didn't know what time we were in at all times, and that's still the case. I mean, even more so because we got 3 parallel timelines that we know of, and it might be revealed that there are even more. And we got the whole "is this now" thing, so that's still going on. And then the first season, it was like, maybe this person is a host, but guess what? We just introduced these brain balls where it's not just maybe this person is a different person, maybe this person is a different host. So we got that. That anyone could be anyone. Like, we're talking about Arnold, like, yeah, it's Arnold, but hey, that could be Dolores. She could come on the train and put her brain in him and then say, I killed them all, because she did. Or, you know, then we got to add this third thing that none of this might be real anyway. Like, any level of this could be fake. Any part of it could be. And I don't believe the letterboxing is the only thing that's going to show if something's real or not. Like, anything could be not real. So there's 3 different levels of time, of who is who, and even if it's real. And hey, why don't we just make a fucking simulation inside of a simulation? Because that's where we're heading.
yeah, so it's quite a tangle web that we weave here at Westworld Theories and Westworld in general.
Yes, I need more string, basically, is what I'm saying, and more colors. from
I
the
am
mall.
excited to see again Ford back though. Although, yeah, it's going to be a lot of cryptic tales and speaking in limericks or whatever.
Yep.
But, I'm excited.
Yeah, I mean, I've it's whenever we talk about Westworld, I start shouting a lot, and I do want to point out, like, I understand people's frustration, but when I've been watching this, I haven't been feeling that frustration. And again, not to say I was ahead of the curve or anything, but I've just come to expect and accept it. It's only when they start doing things that feel like it's dragging that it doesn't feel as good to me. I'm fine with the confusion level of it, but I mean, it's not been too slow, but this train they've been working on for episodes and episodes, and I'm glad it's finally going to arrive. At the same time, we've already seen a lot of corpses in there. There's going to be more corpses. We know Charlotte Hale is going to be fine because she's in the future, unless she's a host. Oh, sometimes it's exhausting, Jim.
Yeah, and it did look like from the next on Westworld, we're gonna finally get to that like slow mo fight thing that happens kind of near the cradle that we got some emails that were speculating on what was happening in the like this season on Westworld at the beginning of the season. So it does look like we're going to see a little bit of that. I do want to call out. I don't know if you see on your when you watch the show if you see like the previously on Westworld.
Yeah, yeah, I
But
do.
this episode 6 previously on Westworld was so annoying and so Westworld because there
Just
was
because
like
they
no
didn't have any dialogue?
yeah, it was no dialogue, and they were trying to be fancy with like the music and the cuts. Like it was trying to be really stylish, and I just saw it as like some assistant editor kid like that works for the show, and he's like, let me put my own spin on it. Let me show it. Let me put a little stank on it, and it just annoyed me because it was just like cuts of Bernard, then cuts of the Man in Black, and then it had like this score and it was trying to be I don't know. It was just trying to be this thing that I didn't like it. I didn't
I
like it.
Yeah, I liked it. I liked the stank. Maybe because every other previously on, we get a flashback to Ford, who's like, "But what is a butterfly, really?" And I'm like, "Oh, what the fuck is? What are you talking about?" So it's actually like, "Oh yeah, these things did happen. I did remember this, and it was pretty short too. So I liked it.
On it. And just these sounds.
Yeah,
Boom boom boom.
you don't like electronic music? You don't like Kraftwerk?
I mean, I guess it is effective. Like it does they do hit on basically Shogun World, Teddy, the Man in Black, but I don't know. I was just
It's
annoyed by it.
it's nowhere near hearing Seven Nation Army on like in the Raj of like on a Citra or whatever to me.
We did get in Shogun World we did get Painted Black in like kind of old Japanese style music. You heard that obviously, right?
Yeah, of course. And also by the way in I guess in episode 4 or I don't recall exactly, but there's at one point where there's a guy playing a guitar and of course he's playing the Westworld theme because no one ever plays any like any original music and like yeah, it's when this bad guy's threatening the town that Lawrence is from, but the guy playing the Westworld theme on the guitar is the composer for the show. And
Uh,
that was a cameo that I was like, okay, I kind of like that because
yeah,
usually those things annoy me, but I was like, no, that's cool.
yeah, I like that. I mean, I do have to call out like because I did some catch up on this show, so I watched a few of these in a row. Um, the intro music is great, and the intro, I know we kind of goofed on it at the beginning, like, ooh, they changed it up at the beginning of the season, but I mean, it's a beautiful intro. You
Yeah,
gotta admit,
yeah, no, absolutely.
it gets you in that
So
Westworld mode.
absolutely. We're in the middle of it. We're in the slog of it now. And I predict that this is the part that, I mean, either it's going to go really wrong and everyone's going to turn on Westworld, but what I think is way more likely is at the end of the season, no one's going to remember these episodes because it's all going to be, can you believe the thing? And that's all we're going to remember when we're starting season 3 as well.
Yeah, yeah, it's gonna come down to the thing.
The
Uh,
things, I
but
think.
I mean, if they do deliver, if it is building to something and it delivers, you got to give them credit for it.
Yeah, and I gotta say, thank God she found her daughter already, because if we had another episode of like, but where's my daughter? I'd be like, well, you should maybe go where she is, you know, like on the map you have, because you're hanging out with a lot of samurai right now.
And I mean, I still like. I thought when they stumbled upon that the Shogun were somehow in Westworld, but no, they actually were in Shogun World. So I don't quite get how that happened.
I guess it was overlapping like the tiger or whatever, but they have not done a very clear job of showing how they're separated, especially considering that we see Mount Fuji in Shogun World, and it's like, how far is this?
Yeah,
Because you did walk there, so it can't be like impossible to get between parks. Granted, all the security and everything is down, so I guess that adds up. But at the same time, in the future, they were like, a tiger? How is this possible? It's like, well, it probably walked, probably got here because you put them all really close together.
and not that they have to really explain this, but I guess some of those horizons have to be fake somehow, right?
Yeah, I was considering that
Mhm.
because you can't really build Fuji like that. But then we get into how much of this is virtual reality or just a projection, like a back projection or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Let's not. We don't need to go further down this path.
No, let's leave it for now because one thing I will say, I've appreciated that almost every episode, maybe except Shogun, they've actually given us pretty big pieces. And like we didn't even know about Delos last time we did a proper episode, like him being alive and
True.
all that stuff. And uh, that's also why I feel not as frustrated because every episode has delivered something new and essential to what's going on. We still don't know how any of the pieces fit together, but we're getting a bit more every time, and I appreciate that.
I agree with that. I agree. I'm
So,
still in. I'm on board.
yes, do you agree? Send your thoughts to westworldtheory@gmail.com or showswhatyouknowshow@gmail.com. You can also, of course, leave a review on your podcatcher of choice, perhaps iTunes. Just search for Westworld Theories. And we do also have a show discussing The Handmaid's Tale called Gilead Gazette, which is something you're going to want to check out. Handmaid's Tale is a very good show, very different, but of a similarly high quality, I would say. And I found myself thinking a bit about the color in the latest episodes of Westworld, and the use of color in The Handmaid's Tale is absolutely wonderful. And if you enjoy good cinema, you should check it out, and also check out our coverage of it.
I agree. Absolutely. And if you want to go back in time for a little bit, play with the timelines, much like Westworld, we also have a show discussing The Sopranos. Yes, that very old show. We are going week to week on episodes, discussing them as well. And you could also, well, that's called Cut to Black, Sopranos Sit Down. And you can find all our stuff at showswhatyouknow.com.
Yes, that's right. Cut to black. And I mean, I think I just have really one more question for you right now, Jim.
Oh, what's that?
Is this now?